Well, hi everyone. I'm Eliza Pessereau. I'm a field specialist in horticulture in St. Louis City and County. And today I want to talk about some pollinator plants, but specifically, what's the buzz with Mow May? We're coming up on May. In urban areas, that's a lot of what folks end up talking about when we talk about protecting pollinators. It's kind of low-hanging fruit. Maybe I'll just not mow my lawn, but is that actually what you should be doing to support pollinators? So in order to talk about Mow May and where it comes from, it's important to understand spring resources and where they fall in terms of the native bee life cycle. So most of our native bees here in the US, they're overwintering in trees, in holes in the ground, in leaf litter, like this bumblebee in the diagram here. And they could be overwintering as adults or as eggs. And then over winter, they pupate, they turn into adults, and then they emerge as adults in the spring. So when those adult bees emerge in the spring, what they're looking for is floral resources. They're looking for flowers that will provide them nectar and pollen, because that way they can get enough energy to start their own either colony or solitary bee nest and then lay their own eggs. In the spring, a lot of what's flowering that early in the season is flowering trees like the apple we have in this other photo. But with land use change, agricultural, housing development, urban development, a lot of those floral resources that early in the spring have gone away. So Mow May was proposed as a way to kind of bring back those early season floral resources. And the idea was to not mow our lawns for the whole month of May and let those flowering weeds like dandelion grow. Lawns make up about 2% of US land use. That ends up being about 40 million acres of land in the US. And that makes lawns the largest irrigated crop, if you can think of it as a crop, in the US. So converting all that land, even for a month in May, would provide a lot more pollen and nectar resources for bees when they really need it. However, Mow May is an idea, the strategy comes from England specifically. So it came from an organization in England a couple years ago. And May is the time of year when their flowering weeds like dandelion are growing. So in England, it makes sense not to mow in May and to let those weeds grow. It's really good timing. However, here in the US, May, especially here in Missouri, our dandelions and other lawn weeds are growing more like April, maybe even late March. So not mowing in May doesn't necessarily apply to us here in Missouri. Additionally, a lot of what's growing those flowering plants on our lawns are not native to the US. Some of them are okay food resources for pollinators, like some of our henbits and dead nettle. They have a good amount of nectar. But things like dandelion that we see a lot of, even though bees will visit them, the pollen that's in a dandelion lacks a crucial amino acid that will prevent bees from developing physiologically to the best of their ability. So basically, if bees are only eating dandelion, they are eating junk food. So dandelion isn't necessarily the best food source for them to be eating, specifically that early in the spring. And additionally, since this initiative was started in England, it makes sense that honeybees are kind of who they were targeting, who they're supporting. They have lots of other native bee species as well, but honeybees are native in England. So they are often the ones who are visiting our lawns here in the US, our lawn flowers, also because those lawn flowers are probably native to Europe and Asia. So really, there's a bit of a mismatch between why Mow May was started and applying it here in Missouri. Additionally, not mowing your lawn for the whole month of May could have some other issues in terms of lawn health. So lawns actually need to be mowed regularly for the health of that turf grass. So going a whole month without mowing and then mowing everything down back to about 4-inch height is actually going to stress your lawn out a lot. Some homeowner associations or counties or even cities will have ordinances also that prevent people from growing anything in their front yard, lawn or not, that's higher than a certain height. What I have right here is the ordinance that we have in St. Charles County. It's actually pretty lax. We allow up to 10 inches in plant height. So you could let your grass grow that tall and your weeds grow that tall, and no one's going to fine you. But a lot of places in the US, the ordinance says more between 4 and 8 inches in height. So that could end up slapping you with the fine if you are letting your lawn grow any higher. And then, of course, letting weeds grow in our lawn can allow them to spread to other neighbors' lawns, which can create their own issues. So things like dandelion, when they have their seed heads, those will spread really easily. So what can you do? Mow May was kind of your low-hanging fruit. That's what you wanted to do. It was going to be your easy way to support pollinators, but don't worry, there are other ways you can support pollinators with your lawn. If you still want to have a lawn in your front yard, that's okay. There are low-growing plants, native and some that are non-native actually, that will support pollinators that you can incorporate into your lawn. So common violet is a native plant we have here in Missouri. We have many different species of violet that are native. It's low growing, so you could still mow your grass and you would not end up hurting the flowers. Self-heal is also native and supports a really wide diversity of pollinators. And then Dutch white clover, although it's not native, supports a distinct group of native pollinators, distinct from self-heal. So there was a study from University of Minnesota looking at lawns that were improved with self-heal. And having both Dutch white clover and self-heal meant that they were able to support even more different types of pollinators. Even though Dutch white clover is not native, it's got high protein pollen and it has a lot of nectar. So bees are still going to go to it. If you're feeling kind of wild and you are open to just totally destroying your lawn, there's this big movement right now that some of you might already be a part of, which is rewilding your yard. I like to think about what the vegetation in our area looked like before colonization happened. What was the vegetation like? So I pulled up this map from MSDIS where we can see the historic vegetation of Missouri. So a lot of the state had prairie, some parts of the state had forest or woodland, and then we also had some barrens or scrub. So going off of that, you can look up the plants that are specific to that type of habitat and plant them in your yard so that you're supporting the specific ecosystem in your county. I know it's really popular since here in the Midwest, prairie historically was a huge ecosystem. So it's really popular to convert a portion of your yard into a small prairie. And a lot of those plants are actually more drought resistant. They'll grow better throughout the year. You won't have to do as much maintenance on your yard. And they provide not only food resources for bees, but also living habitat as well. So that was just a little bit of my recommendations on Mow May, whether or not you want to do it. If you still want to participate in Mow May, you certainly can. Just know that those weeds might not necessarily be the best food resource for pollinators, and you might even want to move that period a little bit early, move it to April. Or instead of going the entire month without mowing, you could just leave your lawn for a couple weeks and then mow it so you're not stressing out your lawn as much. I want to say thank you. And if you have any questions, let's open it up for discussion. I also wanted to remind folks to register for the Master Pollinator Steward course. We're holding a bunch of those all over the state. And in that course, you'll be learning about honeybees, native bees, and how you can protect pollinators in your area.